2 minutes of my thoughts on what the world needs today. I think, frankly, new leadership is part of the answer. Look at the world around us. From a time when many celebrated the arrival of globalization, the benefits of instant communications, and the digital revolution, to the cultural aspects of cosmopolitanism and liberal thinking, we're now being confronted by an unavoidable backlash to these ideas and facing the real risk that the COVID-19 pandemic will inaugurate an era of deglobalization. The signs are mounting that the world may embrace isolationism and protectionism in a far more enthusiastic way than before the outbreak, including in India, where Atmanirbharta is being talked about. The indications are evident because the pandemic has confirmed for many that in times of crisis, people rely on their own governments to shield them. The global supply chains are vulnerable to disruption and are therefore unsustainable, and their dependence on foreign countries for essential goods could be fatal. COVID-19 has also convinced many that strict border and immigration controls are essential and that national interests should trump international cooperation. To many, the answer lies in strong government, in putting the nation's needs over individual citizens' freedoms, and in dispensing with democratic niceties, from federalism to parliamentary oversight, in what the government deems to be the national interest. I think you will agree with me that's not the way we should be going. And if we are to resist such trends, we need new leaders from the young, from the generation that looks with horror on our society becoming more insular, stratified and hostile, wants to rise to the occasion and bring us back together. I'm looking for young individuals who, though rooted in their immediate localities, are capable of displaying the necessary vision and aptitude to think beyond their immediate borders, their immediate realities, ideas that reach out, that revive and champion the notion that we as a human community, as Indians, are stronger when we are together. The new leaders that the world desperately needs will be individuals courageous enough to think beyond their immediate interests and the allure of a bottom line, and instead those who work actively to identify the complex challenges faced by our society and produce innovative ways to successfully address those challenges. At the same time, as I've already said, you must bring us together again, especially those who have been marginalized, discriminated, those who are financially vulnerable, those who are socially excluded. Young leaders of tomorrow must not just be managers, but problem solvers and change makers. We must move beyond narrow concerns of national security, interpreted, say, as freedom from terror or attack, to a broader vision of human security, including freedom from hunger and hopelessness. We must move to a world where everyone has food, clothing, shelter, where democracy reigns, where people's creative and entrepreneurial energies are freed, where human rights are upheld and the environment is protected. Young leaders of tomorrow must join hands with the older leaders in parliament and civil society, in education and more, in order to create a better world for all of us. That's my 2 minutes worth. All the very best.
Good evening and welcome back. What is Adhyatma? Is it a way of life? Who should practice it? There are so many questions in the minds of a common man. Our esteemed guests will discuss this intense subject and try to give us some answers in this discussion on Adhyatma, mysticism or applied science for mind, body and spirit. We welcome to our e-studio Dr. Ranjit Bhogal, Yogachariya Jnandev Giri and Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee. Dr. Ranjit Bhogal, author of 7 books, Professor R.S. Bhogal, is a Joint Director Research, Kaivalyadhama, SMYN Samiti, Lonavala. He is the Head Director Research at the Scientific Research department of Kaivalyadhama and is formerly principal of Govardhan Das Seksariya College of Yoga and CS. His key achievements include Shivram Apte Sanskrit Prize at graduation level, the Bharat Jyoti Award. He has published about 60 research articles and 60 other scientific articles. He has also visited abroad for holding lectures, conferences, and yoga workshops. Yogacharya Jnandev Giri is propagating authentic Sanatan yoga based Indian rishi culture tradition in UK and Portugal. Nyandev is the founder of Gurukul, a home for Sanatan Yoga in UK and Portugal, representing the parampara of Gitananda Yoga. Nyandev is the author of several books and is passionate to educate people about the traditional holistic yoga and its importance and value in our lives. Nyandev is teaching since 2002 and has many years of experience teaching and practicing all the authentic aspects of yoga, asana, pranayama, mantra chanting, bhajan singing, Sanskrit study, yoga chikitsa, satsang, and swadhyay, study of scriptures and yogic self injury. Dipankar Mukherjee is the publisher and director of Readomania, one of India's youngest traditional publishing houses. Under his leadership, the house has produced over 100 books in just about 5 years, with some critically acclaimed titles as well. He's an engineer and holds an MBA degree from IIT Madras and has been in the corporate world for 9 years before becoming an entrepreneur. Let's start the discussion, handing over the virtual mic to Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee. Thank you.
Thank you, Rucha. Namaskar, Mr. Bhogal and Yogacharya ji. It is a pleasure to be on screen sharing days with you virtually. And it is also an honor for me to be moderating the discussion. Without any further delay, let me jump into my first question. What do you think is the core of Adhyatma? And when you answer the question for our audience, I would also request you to tell us something about the body of work that you've done apart from the bio that Rucha has mentioned. And we'll start with Mr. Bhogal.
Thank you. Namaskar. Uh, Swami Kodananji, who established Kaivalyadhama in 1924, was of the mission that yoga can be a fit instrument for social renaissance in those days. And for that, he established Kaivalyadhama here. On one hand, philosophical literary research department, on the other hand, scientific research department. Now, the idea is whatever there in our scriptures, they are our path finders and they can guide us. And then those things we take into our laboratory, and therefore our scientific research department has got six different branches. Physiology section is there, biochemistry section is there, psychology and radiology, and physical education. And also Ayurveda. So idea is that we have to close on to research into yoga through different aspects. And my role here is in joint director. I am at this moment guiding both the department, and here I am engaged myself in scientific research into meditation and also in Omkar and such subtler practices. We have very many projects from Ayush Mantralaya, CCRYM, and also from ICMR project. And so we are going into scientific research, that is some gene expression studies in pre-diabetic patients and so on and so forth. Very many, and pranayama and all that. Well, Adhyatma. Adhyatma means when you have comprehensive awareness and comprehensive freedom. Now, comprehensive awareness would be gained through three things: Sat, Chit, Anand. And comprehensive freedom would be gained through the two, that is Mukta Sarup and Isha Sarup. Now, Sat, Chit, Anand. Sat means the permanence you feel within, security, total comprehensive security. The second, chip, knowing stance, something is there, inquisitiveness throughout. This is life always, it's never dying. And you have then Ananda, that is absolute joy, what Bhagavad Gita says, Prasade Sarva Dukkhanam Hanirasa Bhajayate. So that would take care of your awareness. And freedom, Mukta Swarup, you feel free. But then you are on the good path, but also you long to take others to good path. You are leader, leading others to good path, not to the destructive path, what we see. No, that is yoga. Yoga. So that is comprehensive awareness leading to comprehensive freedom, and comprehensive freedom is leading to comprehensive awareness. That is nothing but spirituality. So, so this is Adhyatma, Adhyatma. It is complete in entirety. You study self. In India, we do not have the idea, this dichotomy that this is corporeal world and that is the spiritual world. Both are having reflection and both are in fact complementary to each other. And that's what all rishis, now all were, almost all, excepting few, were married also. Because they wanted to know what is the reality and it helped them. It is very concrete, say, approach by them. So that this is, and I myself is interested in saving, preserving Sanatan Sanskriti. This is my burning wish that someday, because we are losing ground in this area, that's what I perceive. We do not have any one institution which would give you a kind of a kind of basic things in meditation. We have to look into Buddhist. Well, Buddhists are our own fold also. They are not different people. But we expected more from Ramakrishna Much than what we are getting. For that, we cannot blame anyone. But we have to all, in unison, collectively do something for saving our Sanskriti. Because people are taking outside Sanskriti. And they are mutilating. This is why my perception is that. Why can't we get up and then protect it? So my passion is to do something for meditation, for all scriptures are there. They have wonderful gems are there. I have found out 3 gems there in our scriptures myself. There are innumerable gems are there in Upanishads and also say post-Patanjali, pre-Patanjali period also. So that's my passion.
Thank you so much for giving us the introduction, Mr. Bhogal. I would now request Yogacharya ji to give us a brief view of the work that he's doing and give us an introduction on what is Adhyatma.
Thank you. Especially thank you, Bhogal ji. That was very interesting and inspiring. And I guess it's kind of answering, taking it from there. It's quite nice, and also it becomes very difficult. But well, Adhyatma is really taking those challenges and moving forward into life. To me, talk a little bit about me and the work is something I don't really ever enjoy for my own reasons. But yes, I've been sort of teaching yoga since 2002. And one of the things I've always been passionate about is really looking at our Vedic, our yogic, or Upanishadic and Vedantic teachings in a holistic manner together. And for me, when deeper I dive into it, I find that how these absolute teachings can lead us to the sense of bliss, the sense of freedom or liberation in our life. And this is what I'm trying to really, move forward with, sort of educating people, sharing those teachings. And then since 2008, I have come to the UK, and I'm also traveled quite a lot between here and the Europe. So we have 2 ashrams that we are running. And the main work for me, I am really passionate about is actually reestablishing our true or the authentic yoga teachings and sort of slightly giving it a little bit of touch of our modern science and the modern understanding. And at this point of my life, I'm sincerely more passionate about actually taking some of these abstract ideas, the principles and concepts of our not just the yogic, the Sankhya teachings, but also the Tantra, also our Upanishads and the Vedic teachings to actually understand that how important they are for humanity, how important they are for our health, well-being, and spiritual development. So I have been running yoga teacher training courses at all level. And I guess in some ways it's a little bit more challenging here in West, because there are all sorts of, the teacher training courses in Ashtanga, in Vinyasa, in power yoga, hot yoga, bear yoga, dog yoga. I don't know. There is all sorts of stuff going on here. So there is a bit more challenge, but also a little bit more joy, which I'm enjoying. And as you mentioned, I have been writing, and so far we got like 9 books published, and I got few more. Those are going through the publishing house, so this should be out soon. Anyway, let's move on from there into our actual subject of interest, Adhyatma. I guess to me, when I think of Adhyatma, is Adhyatma. So the Atman is the self, like Patanjali, I really love the way to start with, like the way Patanjali did in Yoga Sutras, as he talk of Swarupe Avasthanam. So coming back to that essence, the core of our existence, to that subtle reality of our Atman, our consciousness, as Mr. Bhogal was saying about the Sat Chit Ananda. So Adhyatma to me really can be seen as a lifestyle, as Patanjali says, Atha Yoga Anusasanam. So it's to live here and now in this moment. And to me, when I think of our Vedic concepts and ideas of the relativity of time into the Adhyatmic scriptures, our spiritual scriptures, the past and the future does not really have the reality. It's more of the illusion. What really matters is what is here and now. So the core of Adhyatma is actually to come back to the Swarupa Sthanam, that sense of ease, to be established in ourself, and then to live in this moment. So I'm not living my past and I'm not living my future. I live here and in this moment. And in that moment, can I connect with the core of my existence, that Sat Chit Ananda? And if somehow, like even I do find it a bit sad that way we Indians have taken our spiritualism and Adhyatma as the mysticism, or as a philosophy, or something that to read, to memorize. Actually, in Adhyatma, to me, if you can even take one simple practice of the self-inquiry of Koham, who am I, and getting to know that core, or that essence of myself as an individual, that can begin with my being in my physical body, then being in my mind, then being in my conscious self. And there is Adhyatma. So the Adhyatma really, to me, like when I look at the Vedic context, our yogic concept, either into the pre or the post sort of yoga, the modern, the mid time, and then the ancient time, it's really all about how do I come back home, and how do I become one with myself, and then live my life free from the conflict. Now the conflict can be within me, isn't it? Like, do I like myself? Do I approve of myself? Am I happy with my physical appearance? Am I happy with my mental appearance, my intelligence, my skills? And then my conflict with other people. So I have conflict with friends, family, the society, the education. And then we have the conflict in our spiritual being, our relation with the divine, our relation with the supreme reality. And to me, that's how I see the whole yogic or Vedic or Hindu teachings. Our lifestyle is all about how do we resolve those conflicts. If you take a Bhagavad Gita, it's all about that, isn't it? Like, how do I resolve my conflict, overcome my own demons, and then how I overcome the demons from my surroundings, the society, the people, and then come back to the core of my self. So to me, that is Adhyatma. Adhyatma is to live our full potential.
Wonderful. So, Mr. Bhogal, my next question to you would be, should achieving Adhyatma be the ultimate goal of human life?
Well, Adhyatma is in our life, and it cannot be separated. And so experiential phenomenon is the very road to move to that direction. Shankaracharya ji has said that Tatasita bodhayanti guruvyo shruteyo yatha. Pradnya eva taret vidvanam ishvaranugrihitaya. It means you can, if you have best of gurus, if you have best of Grantha, all the scriptures, but they will not help you. It is like standing at the bank of the river or ocean. Only and only Pratnya. That is the very unique, subtle intelligence. When you use it, experiential level, and then there is Ishvaranugrihitaya, then the Ishwar Anugrahan would be there. And that is the very, and why our passion in our institution is collective passion to bring all this Adhyatma or the spirituality in the realm of science. Now, we know that Swami Vivekananda has also said that it is very limited approach when we look for the scientific methodology to know the Adhyatma, but then to some extent, as far as we can go, we should go. And then we will have to other means, just like qualitative analysis and also the experiential kind of things. And now of late, scientific research has shown that qualitative research is looking up like anything. So that is our passion. And the idea is that we have to move ahead, and we have to start somewhere, and science would be helping us. And for that, we have our scriptures, Kathopanishad, is we are just like chariot, the whole body. Atmana Rathina Viddhi, Shariram Rathamevtu, Buddhistu Saratim Viddhi, Mana Pragramevacha. So that is the way we have to have Pratyahara, through that we can have positive control. Remember, positive control is what is given by Pratyahara. So that is Pratyahara is something, is not that suppression or repression, positive. And through that we can calm down our chitta. This would all these indriyas would then follow chitta, which is already calm, and thereby the buddhi, which is decision making faculty, and that would be in liaison with the Atman. So that way this way we flourish we develop our personality, and we inch towards development of our own personality. So this is the way we have to find out such different methods, and we are finding through meditation. For example, how to get rid of sleeplessness. Even when you are stressful, how to tap some very practical yoga kriyas, that is yogic meditation methods, so that you are helped, and how to bring sleep at will. All these things we are having, so that we can bring, like what Aurobindo has said, to bring the consciousness on our whole earth, so that we become equipped. We are equipped then to handle our all problems. So that is the passion we are working in our institution. I think it is very practical approach, and they are giving dividends, good dividends also.
Great. Yogacharya ji, what in your opinion is this? Is and should Adhyatma or achieving Adhyatma be the ultimate goal of human life?
No, I guess, like, to me, I will start with, the way Lord Krishna explains, in Bhagavad Gita, and similarly sort of what Patanjali says in Yoga Sutras. And then you can look at the essence of our Vedic teachings, the Hindu or the yogic, or how you explain this Adhyatma from our traditions. Each and every living being, our ultimate goal of life is really to attain that Adhyatma, is to attain that absolute potential, to attain that oneness with our body, mind, and spirit, and then have the self-realization. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita several times throughout the teachings, the Atmajnana is our absolute desire, or the absolute seeking that we all are moving to it. Now, the only thing is, because we are living into this dynamic life, which is continuously influenced by our mind, our chitta vrittis. Now, are we going one way towards the Adhyatma or to this self-realization, or are we going away from it? So it really depends on, what sort of mind, what sort of life, and the energies and the virtues I'm living. Either it's taking me towards Adhyatma, or it's taking me away from it. But yes, ultimately the goal of our life is to really attain that Adhyatma. And that's where I see myself, this whole concept, or the ideas of our yogic teaching, of the Ashtanga yoga. And if you look at the layout, the way Patanjali goes through, the Yoga Sutras, or if you look at the layout, the way Lord Krishna and Arjun, when they are discussing about it, the way they take through the teaching from the beginning to the end. Or we can also consider Yoga Vasistha, the way that the dialogue goes between Lord Rama and then the Guru Vasistha. So there is this, in-depth study of the psychology and our biology, our energetic changes and what we go through. And then there are tools. You can look at the Yoga Sutras really easily to put them in pattern. Patanjali says very few sentences or the sutras in beginning about Atha Yoga Anusasanam. Yoga is to hear and be in this moment as part of the discipline, to follow the path. And through following that path, we attain Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the inner peace or the inner tranquility of mind. And when that happens, when that manifests, then we attain our absolute potential. We become one with ourselves, Swarupi Avasthanam. And to me, that is the state of Adhyatma. And then he says, okay, this is ultimate goal of life. Then what's happening otherwise? Yoga. So then he talks about Chitta Vrittis, Vartaya Panchataya. So otherwise, we are busy in the patterns or the thoughts, this whirlpools that into our mind. And then gradually, he takes us through, again, he comes back to the practices, then he goes back into various states of our mind, then he goes into the pain and the suffering, and in that way, really, ultimately, the Adhyatma becomes almost like a path, like a practice, and then the ultimate goal of our life itself. And in that, then, when we bring the science in, to me, the way I see, and I don't know, I may be wrong, but to me, the way I conceptualize our yogic teachings, I feel and I believe that deeply from myself. And it can be just because I am Indian. I've been born there, and I take pride in our teachings and this ancient wisdom that we have been blessed with. That our Vedic science actually is still way ahead to the modern science. And in some ways, to me, I feel, like something that we are lacking in India, that we're not really taking pride. We're not taking actually the wisdom that is already there. We're trying to chase the modern science. We're trying to chase where the science is taking us. So Adhyatma can be seen as a theory. This is what, the West, especially, I guess in a Western sort of society, that's how they see it. The Western science like to see our Vedic culture or Vedic teachings, yogic teachings as some kind of mysticism, some kind of fantasy. But in reality, you see, the Adhyatma is really the ultimate practice and the path and the fruit or the goal that we all should have in our life. And there is nothing really matters. And I really love one of the statement Swami Geetananda Giri, or Guru, makes in one of the course he wrote, step-by-step course. He said in his life, and he was a great doctor, heart surgeon, and towards the end he mentions, like, if there was anything worth for him to learn and follow in life, it was all about the yoga, the yogic teachings, the Adhyatmic teachings. That's why the only thing he found was worth learning, worth living. And I think where I am at this point in my journey, I would say anything I feel really worth for us to learn, practice, and promote, teach, and share with other people is the Adhyatmic teachings. And how do I come back to myself? Because we are really looking at becoming a virtuous human being who believes in Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, human being who believes in the universality, human being who believes in a total peace. So there is no conflict, there is no duality anymore. So that's sort of, I guess, how I see Adhyatma.
Wonderful. I think that's a very, very nice way of putting it, Yogacharya ji. You mentioned something about science as well, and I want to put this question to Mr. Bhogal now. Many would argue that our spirituality and our entire Adhyatma practice doesn't have scientific credibility. How would you argue that, and what is your point against or for this?
I feel very earnestly that there is psychology, and that too yoga psychology. Modern psychology and yoga psychology, there are worlds apart. But then the modern psychology also has been included in yoga psychology, plus something more. So It means, say, for example, we have such practices. You have to practice and you look at the effects of them and you are moving towards Adhyatma. What you need more. For example, as I was referring to Pratyahar, Swavishaya Asamprayoge, Chitta Sarupanukar Evendriyanam Pratyahar, Patanjali Yoga Sutra says. That is, you have to wean away from the object of senses in a positive way. Now, what do you say, positive way? Positive way means you have to give. For example, there is a wonderful pratyahara technique in Vasishtha Samhita. Ashtadashasu yad vayur marma sthaneshu dharanam sthanata sanata samakrishya sa pratyahara cha uttama. The best pratyahara is you have to just feel 18 different marmas, very sensitive points in your body, and people vouch that once they feel different parts of the body, they feel that they are having yogic concentration, not the usual concentration. Usual concentration is tiring in nature, but yogic concentration is uplifting and you move towards samadhi. So such practices are there. Now look at the way we have to recite mantras. They have been given, Udat, Anudat and Swarit, the up and down, all that Vedic mantras. They are something which when you recite, you get the effect. So it is not that we first just preach and then you have to have yamas and niyamas forced upon you. You have to practice and the effect is there. On the other hand, yamas niyamas would follow you rather than you are following yamas niyamas. Because in Hatha Yoga, you start with asanat. Asanat prathamanga todasanam purubuchate. And sthairam arogyam changalagvam. Puryat tasanam. Sthairam arogyam changalagvam. It means if you practice even asanas and pranayamas in an experiential way, what has been enjoined in our scripture, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also, there are 3 conditions for asanas, but I am not mentioning it for want of time. Now, the whole literature is full of such practices. In Tantra, there are so many such practices. You practice this and you get the effect. You move towards that. What do you need more? Only one thing is that we need such teachers, honing teachers, evolving teachers, and they are not there. Very many, and they can be trained. Yoga is a training, in fact. It's not that some are very few, select few, and they can advance in yoga and others cannot. It is trainable. So there are so many such kind of things, techniques available. They are giving you results. And Kriya Yoga techniques, which I was mentioning last time, was something. You have this Kriya Yoga, and this is simplified meditation technique, and you feel something within, and there are changes in your environment. So such kind of methods are to be canvassed, to be told to people, particularly all those who are modern thinking people, because they want evidence. And no more evidence than your own experience would tell you that it is something worth. And so such kind of practices should be called out and should be given. There are Sagarva Pranayama technique. There are so many different techniques are available. And as I told last time, Lord Krishna has said that the way of Omkar recitation, this is the road to meditation. There are many such techniques available, and that they are very practical. And then we get something. Merely that this is good, our science is nice, it will be helpful. How the West is asking, not only West, our doctors, medical doctors are asking, how? You see, in the USA, we don't have any disbursement given to the yogic therapy. Why? While acupuncture things are there and they take all the medical disbursement, because we are not evolving yogic therapy on the proper scientific line. Well, science cannot give answer to all aspects of Adhyatma, but then it can give some kind of direction so that it is appealing to people, and then people would start having, and that way the evolution of the whole mankind would happen, and then the ascendance and then descendants, what Aurobindo has said, would come, and that we are waiting for the day when we have the Adhyatma coming to us and we all become superhuman. If not superhuman, well, half superhuman, we can solve the problems. Now, small things you cannot change and you are locked in the war. See, you don't know how to come to the table. All these things are going on. So why? Because our intellect is very, very narrow. With the help of yoga, all these yoga practices, the vision would be expanded, we will be expanding, and then the problems will be solved like anything. So need of the hour is to have such kind of practices integrated in our school curriculum also to some extent, and we have to prepare also our teachers. Well, I'm not giving more sermons. I think I will stop so that I can just do the way our moderator wants. Thank you very much.
Great, that was very wonderfully put. Yogacharya ji, I have a counter question to what Mr. Bhogal has mentioned. He did somewhere mention that probably yogic therapy needs a scientific process to it. Well, something I have been thinking in my mind that whenever we talk about Adhyatma, spirituality, or yogic practices, we fall back on all the work that has been done by our ancestors. Does that mean that our current generations are not adding anything to that body of work or creating any new knowledge that could be harnessed further?
To
I
step
guess,
it.
thank you. That's very interesting. And I guess, like to me, when I look at our present time, especially in India itself, compared more to the West, you see, we almost like we are constantly trying to run and chase the science that is there, all the modern concepts and ideas and principles, what people are trying to educate us into. Either it's the therapy or any of these Adhyatma teachings. And one of the things that, every time I work with different institutes here, I've been through various universities and where I get invited to talks and stuff. You see, one of the biggest conflict between our ancient yogic wisdom or this yogic practices, either you look at them therapeutic perspective, preventive perspective, healing perspective, or enlightenment, liberation. To me, whichever way we look at them, the one of the big obstacle, because our science does not really have answer to them, and then the Western history, the Western society, you see, they somehow don't like to look something that is beyond their understanding, because then it makes them feel inferior. And the way our Indian culture or Indian society has been presented last sort of 600 700 years, we put back into the corner through the abuse and our history, so we caught up into that history ourselves. And because of that, now we are trying to live what is given to us out there by the Western society, the Western education system. And we're trying to live something that is not real for us, that is not something that we actually genetically belong to. And then that is causing this constant conflict between us as a human being, as our existence, or that inherited desire that we all are born for. But to me, the way I really see, and I do see that the yoga, that the wisdom teachings now is starting to evolve, and we're trying to move forward with it. And I guess some of the obstacles, when I look back into it, is actually one of the practices we all are so stuck into our books, or into, I don't really like to call our scriptures books, but sometimes, to me, when people get so rigid into, okay, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says do this practice that way. Now, physically, anatomically, we note the people who were doing the Hatha Yoga 2 3,000 years ago. Mentally, when you look at the Yoga Sutras, yes, we are not Mercy Patanjali and the people. He was living the psychology with it. So the practices need to be evolved. We need to change our language. We need to understand our ideas, principles into the context, to the modern language, the modern science, however we see it. And when we let the practices to live and evolve in that moment, then I personally believe, you see, we will actually become resource for the modern science, instead of us using the modern science to prove our practices. The modern science is trying to catch up. We have the concept of Adi Vyadi, psychosomatic, taught into Yoga Vasistha, and which can be, a good 4 5,000 years old. We have been taught this amazing psychology of our mind, and the spirit, the science of consciousness into yoga. We have been given science of our whole anatomical structure, our body, into the Panch Mahabhuta concept. So, again, for me, I see that our Vedic science, our yogic science actually is way ahead of our modern science. The only thing we need to do, especially we Indian people, we need to actually invest in the infrastructure. We need to invest in our education. We need to invest in the wisdom that is already there and then reestablish it. That to me, when I look at some of the modern concepts, the science talking about the concept of creation, like Big Bang Theory, the scientist who wrote it, he said every time he was lost, he would consider reading into the Upanishads. And to me, it's a pure explanation of the Sankhya concept of creation into the Big Bang Theory. So how do we actually see, is the science taking on from what we are talking? The concept of prana, this absolute energy that is all pervading, eternally existing, it's a catalytic force, it's never being created, never being destroyed. Well, that's what Einstein says, isn't it? The concept of energy conservation. So it's more, I think we people need to actually invest in the wisdom that is already there, and then change our language. Yes, we need to change our language, we need to change our words. In ancient scriptures, they talked about the Brahma, Vishnu, and the Sadasiva in the form of electron, proton, and neutron. There's not a huge difference in the concept of creation, that the trinity of the energy that holds the creation, that preserves it, and then that explodes it back to the end of it. So I guess, to me, when I think of this science and our yogic and the Vedic teachings, we need to move forward and then bring the science in our teachings instead of us following the science to prove our teachings. So I see it totally other way around myself, and this is the work I'm doing with the people I'm training. I'm giving them I personally feel like I'm giving them the science, the yogic science, the life sciences we have, which is way ahead of our modern science. And a couple of years back, I will share, one of the neuroscience university in London, the Queen's University, and they were doing some research in epigenetics, and there was a really amazing gathering there, and they invited me to represent our ancient or Vedic science. Now, hearing them talking about neuroscience, hearing them talking about epigenetics, and then hearing them talking from the psychology perspective, and then I represented our Vedic teaching. And actually, at the end, you see, my conclusion is really what they were talking about, the epigenetics, was just putting the two Vedic practices together of the samskara, our karma, and the gunas. Okay, so let's come back.
That's wonderfully put. I think we've got a wonderful new view to what you've mentioned here. That brings me to my next question to Mr. Bhogal. Much is left to be done by Indians in kind of taking this mainstream in terms of infrastructure, in terms of training, in terms of awareness. What would you say should be our country's priority to take this body of knowledge, own it, and spread it around?
Well, the awareness should be our watchword, and this has to be integrated from the grassroots level. But then for that we have to create teachers. To give you example, that we don't say that we have to prove all that Indian knowledge or Indian science, spiritual science, in terms of science, modern science, no way. But then we have to also keep in mind that our Upanishad says, avidya mrityum tirtva vidya mritmashnute. It means the physical sciences are not to be shunned, because then we have to transcend them and then we can go towards spirituality. To give you some example, see, there is what a parallel there we find. We have three kinds of akash: bahyakash, antarakash, and chirakash. Now, just to go for this exteroception, whatever we have the impulses coming from outside, and interoception, visceroception is there, that we have, say, proprioception is there, vestibular sense is there, that is inner one. And this is the main thing. We have to do something so that feeling aspect is ingrained in the young mind. We don't know how to feel. We only want to think and think. And thinking is only brain. And then what it is giving us in turn, you see, even the small children are taking guns and shooting their fellow students. What is it? Is it the personality development? Because then we have to inculcate how to feeling. That's what the Readomania is doing with the doctrine of peace. Feeling what these creatures, which are our own friends, feel. And that's what our Dr. Anjali Prabhu has done. She has actually felt. And all this feeling and feeling and feeling, and then we move into meditation and the samadhi and all the things you see everywhere. But then brain, well, but the framework can be scientific so that we can tell it to people, those who are educated. The language should be modern, language should be scientific, but then we have to inculcate all that which is there in Vedas or in Upanishads, and it is possible. So you see, Chidakash is internal, outside the exteroception, inside interoception, and then we have Chidakash deep inside. And that is in fact the medium through which we can go. And what Kathopanishad again says, Paranchikhani Vetrinat Sambhu Swayambhu, Tasmat Paran Pashyati Nantaratman, Kaschi Dhira Pratek Atmanam, Akshada Vrit Chakshu Amritatvam Ichan. You have to go inside, and then there is a kind of evolution taking place outside. So for that, what we need of the hour is awareness, and we have to be quite liberal in funding people, those who want to do something. Maybe it is trash or something, but then these kind of research, which is failure research, would give way to wonderful researchers ahead. But then we people want only therapy. Well, Swami Kolananji used to say that, well, therapy would be useful only when you know the fundamental principles of yoga and spirituality. If you do know the fundamental things, then the results would be sometimes it is increasing, better effects are there, sometimes no effect is there, sometimes less. And the same stimulus is given. This is going to happen because we don't know actually the nature of different practices on the scientific line and as far as science goes. And then we can go for some kind of own way of interpretation. They say, for example, we have what Bhagavad Gita says. Wonderful. That is, Vishya vinivartante, niraharasya yogina, rasvarjam rasopyasa, param dashtva nivartate. It means, if we can say that I will not watch TV now, well, I will keep my TV set at the adjacent room. But then at the time 8 o'clock when I watch usually my TV program, at the time I'll go for just news. What Bhagavad Gita says that ras vrajam rasopyasa, even this inclination should be washed off. And for that we have different techniques available. Technologies are there, in mantras are there, so many, but then they are not taken care, they are not looked at. And some people, those who speak about, they are not encouraged something. Why they are not encouraged? Are we foreign people? We are Indians. Can't we do something, save our Sanskriti? Look at all European countries, what they have preserved there. If you go to them, all their monuments are so nicely preserved. And if you go here in Nashik, you cannot preserve your, where Ramji and Sitaji was there. You can't preserve this. Why? What has happened to us? Because awareness is lacking. And for that, it is collective. We cannot blame government. It has got limitations, you know it. I don't want to speak about it. But then let the like-minded people unite and do something selflessly. Unless we do it, see, our posterity would question us, what you were doing, nothing for us. You had such a great heritage, but you have to do something. Well, therefore, the last my sentence is, the language can be modern, scientific language. Through that language, we can give our Vedic and Upanishadic knowledge to the world, and then only we can think that someday we can be Vishwaguru. Otherwise, simply hollow slogans will not happen. Thank you very much. And I'm really very sorry that I'm outright in my speaking, because I'm scientist and I'm not afraid of anything. Thank you very much.
You've spoken wonderfully well, Mr. Bhogal. Yogacharya ji, what would be in your opinion, the priorities for us?
I think in this, actually, Bhogalji has summarized the whole thing so beautifully. So to me, just a few things I'm going to try to say over time a little bit here, that I would mention the thing that we need to change our education system at a grassroots level. And when I say changing our education system into the yogic and Vedic concept, the step one, we must realize that the whole Vedic, the yogic teaching, our science, Adhyatma Vigyan we're talking here, is actually not a theory. It's not a theory. It's not a philosophy. It's actually a pure science of our body, mind, and spirit, or the life itself on how to live, how to grow and evolve. And I think the day we change our mindset towards our wisdom that we have, we will be in a great place. We will be a great place. We will take pride, and then we will actually take our education to the highest level. Because at this point, you see, in our Indian culture especially, the wisdom of yoga, this wisdom of like even the sannyas has been taken in a way like, if I cannot do anything in life, then I will go and become a sadhu, become a monk. Actually, in ancient time, becoming a sadhu, becoming a monk was actually becoming a great guru. As Mr. Bhogal was mentioning several times, that we don't have those teachers anymore. And you know why don't we have teachers anymore? Because we have taken our Adhyatma as some sort of mysticism, as some sort of philosophy or idea, and anyone can dress up, and there is actually no knowledge, no experimentation, and no practice to it. So to me, we got to change that mindset, that the yoga, this Vedic wisdom, Vedantic wisdom, the Adhyatma Vigyan is actually a practice. And I guess that the difference between our modern and the ancient science, the modern science would be like, okay, let's go and experiment on rabbits, let's go experiment on rats, let's experiment on monkeys. Well, like these yogis said, oh, let's go and experiment in or within ourselves. So yes, it is experiential practice to really know what is that the absolute truth, and in that way you can look at the therapeutic and the healing or the spiritual context and concept. So to me, we need to take our practices to that intellectual level, to that scientific level, and it will be fine.
Thank you so much, Yogacharya ji. I think we've come to the end of our discussion. It was a pleasure talking to both of you, and we've gained some great insights around the topic. And I now hand over the virtual mic back to the anchor.
Thank you for this extraordinary information. Thank you, Dr. Ranjit Bhogal, Yogacharya Jnandev Giri, and Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee for being IFSI guests. We will gather here for our final conversation of the festival, Moksh, Destination or Mirage, at 7:15 p.m. I am sure you're all eagerly waiting for this. See you then.